I didn't know that a birthday cake could feel heavier than a coffin. But that night, it did. Everyone says birthdays are supposed to make you feel special. Loved. Celebrated. Safe. Mine didn't. Mine ended my marriage. The hall was full of people who thought they knew me. Crystal lights above. Soft music playing. Phones already raised, ready to record a perfect couple moment. I stood there in a red dress my husband chose himself. He said red looked powerful on me. I didn't realize that night, power was exactly what he was about to take. He held the microphone like he owned the room. Like he owned me. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, smiling. "Tonight isn't just her birthday. It's also a celebration of truth." People laughed. I smiled too. Because when you trust someone, you never imagine betrayal wearing a smile. Then he lifted a small black gift box. "This," he said, "is my gift to my wife." Applause exploded. Someone shouted, "Open it." I stepped closer to him. I remember thinking it might be jewelry. Maybe a necklace. Something expensive to show off in front of his business friends. He opened the box. There were no diamonds. No ring. No love. Just papers. Divorce papers. For a second, my brain refused to understand what my eyes were seeing. I actually thought it was a joke. A cruel joke, but still a joke. Then he leaned toward the microphone and said the words that shattered everything. "I'm done pretending. I don't want to be married to a woman who holds me back." The room went silent. I felt hundreds of eyes burn into my skin. Phones zoomed closer. Some people gasped. Others smiled. He continued. "She's not the woman people think she is. And tonight, I'm finally free." That's when I understood. This wasn't a breakup. This was a performance. He wanted witnesses. He wanted humiliation. He wanted me small. My hands were shaking, but my face stayed calm. Not because I was strong. Because I was in shock. I heard whispers around me. Did she know? Wow, on her birthday? She looks so embarrassed. Embarrassed. Funny word. Because what I felt wasn't embarrassment. It was clarity. I suddenly remembered every time he asked me to sign papers without reading them. Every time he said, "Trust me." Every time he reminded me that without him, I was nothing. I realized something else too. He thought I was unprepared. He thought I would cry. Run. Collapse. He had no idea who he married. I stepped forward and took the microphone from his hand. The crowd froze. My voice was calm when I spoke. "You chose the right day," I said. "Because birthdays are about new beginnings." His smile faltered. I reached into my bag and pulled out an envelope. Thick. Heavy. "And this," I said, holding it up, "is my gift to you." People leaned forward. He looked confused. For the first time that night, unsure. I placed the envelope on the table next to the cake. "Don't worry," I added softly. "You'll understand soon." I stepped back, blew out the candles, and smiled. That was the moment he realized something was wrong. But by then, it was already too late. Everyone expected me to break after that night. What they didn't know was that I had already started planning long before the cake was cut. After the birthday party, the world decided my story for me. Clips of my humiliation went viral. Headlines called me the woman divorced on her birthday. Strangers argued in comment sections about what kind of wife I must have been. No one asked me the truth. I went home alone that night. Not to cry. Not to beg. But to open drawers I was never meant to touch. The house felt different without him. Quieter. Safer. I locked the door and sat on the floor, still wearing that red dress. Then I remembered something he once said, laughing. "You don't need to understand business. That's my world." That sentence echoed in my head as I opened his office cabinet. Folders. USB drives. Old contracts. At first, I didn't even know what I was looking for. I just followed instinct. And instinct led me straight to the lies. There were properties registered under my name that I had never seen. Loans taken using my identity. Company transfers signed with signatures that looked like mine, but weren't. Forgery. Fraud. Betrayal with paperwork. My hands stopped shaking. Because suddenly, everything made sense. The sudden pressure to sign documents. The way he controlled every financial conversation. The confidence he had while humiliating me publicly. He wasn't just leaving me. He thought he had already won. I spent the next 3 weeks doing something no one expected. I stayed silent. While he gave interviews about personal growth. While his friends toasted his freedom. While people online forgot my name. I met accountants. Investigators. A lawyer who didn't flinch when I placed the files on her desk. She looked at me and said one sentence. "He didn't just disrespect you. He committed crimes using you." That night, I finally cried. Not because I was weak. But because I was angry. And anger, when controlled, is dangerous. The court date arrived faster than he expected. He walked in confident. Designer suit. Expensive watch. The same smile he wore on my birthday. When he saw me, his eyebrows lifted slightly. He thought I came to negotiate. To settle quietly. To save face. The judge asked him to speak first. His lawyer painted me as emotional. Unstable. A woman seeking revenge because she was abandoned. I watched him nod along. Then it was my turn. I stood up slowly. "I'm not here for revenge," I said. "I'm here for records." The screen behind me turned on. The first document appeared. Property transfers. Gasps filled the room. Then bank statements. Forged signatures highlighted in red. Then audio recordings. His voice. Clear. Calm. Saying my name like it was a tool. The judge leaned forward. My husband's smile disappeared. By the time I finished, the courtroom wasn't whispering anymore. It was silent. The judge spoke words that still echo in my memory. "This court recognizes manipulation, fraud, and intent." His assets were frozen. The divorce was granted in my favor. Criminal charges approved. As we walked out, reporters surrounded me. They shouted questions. "How does it feel to win? Is this your revenge?" I looked straight into the cameras and said, "I didn't win. I survived." That night, while he sat alone reading legal notices, I opened my laptop and registered a company under my own name. Because I knew something he didn't yet. The courtroom wasn't the end. It was the beginning. The day he walked into prison, he thought his punishment was over. He had no idea that I was just getting started. People assume jail breaks a man. What it really does is strip him of illusion. No mirrors. No audience. No power. Just silence. He tried calling me from inside. Again. And again. Blocked. Then one morning, a guard handed him an envelope. No return address. No signature. Just one sentence typed neatly in the center of the page. You lost the marriage. Now you're about to lose the empire. He laughed when he read it. I know he did. Because arrogance dies slowly. Outside those walls, the media had moved on. There was a new scandal every week. New villains. New victims. And that's exactly what I needed. Silence is a perfect disguise. The court ordered his company to be auctioned. The same company he once told me I was too emotional to understand. The same company he built using my credit, my name, my risk. Everyone assumed I would show up to the auction. Reporters waited. Cameras ready. I didn't go. Instead, I watched the live stream from my office. A new investor appeared, quiet, anonymous. No interviews. No photos. Just one aggressive bid after another. By the end of the auction, the headline read, Former CEO's company acquired by private group. No one connected it to me. Not yet. Inside prison, he saw the news on a small television bolted to the wall. He stared at the screen like it was lying. That company was his identity. Without it, he was nothing. What he didn't know was that the private group belonged to me. Not directly. Not legally obvious. I had learned from him. Control doesn't scream. It moves quietly. Weeks later, he requested a visit. Against my lawyer's advice. I agreed. The prison smelled like metal and regret. We sat across from each other, separated by glass. He looked smaller. Older. For the first time since I met him, unsure. I never meant for it to go this far, he said. His voice cracked perfectly, almost convincing. I was angry. I felt disrespected. I held the phone calmly. You humiliated me publicly, I replied. You forged my identity privately. You didn't feel disrespected. You felt entitled. He swallowed hard. Can you help me? He asked. You have connections now. You always were smarter than I gave you credit for. That sentence told me everything. Even now, he thought I was an extension of him. I leaned closer to the glass. Do you know who owns your company now? I asked. He shook his head. I smiled. You work for me, I said softly. Every hour you sit here pays me dividends. His face drained of color. I stood up before he could respond. One more thing, I added. You gave me divorce papers on my birthday. I paused. I gave you time. I walked out without looking back. That night, I sat alone in my office, city lights glowing behind me. On the wall in front of my desk, I wrote one sentence. Power isn't taken. It's transferred. And I hadn't transferred everything yet. Because some endings are meant to be public. He thought losing his empire was the worst thing that could happen. But the real punishment was watching his name rot. After the prison visit, I realized something important. The world doesn't fear money. It fears truth. He had built his life on an illusion. A fake story. A false image. So I decided to destroy it. I started by hiring a PR team. Not to promote me. To expose him. The strategy was simple. If he could humiliate me publicly, I could humiliate him professionally. I didn't want revenge that looked like revenge. I wanted a comeback that looked like justice. The first move was subtle. I contacted the investors who had supported him. I told them the truth, quietly. Without drama. Without shouting. I presented the evidence, proof of fraud, forged documents, illegal transfers. Some investors were shocked. Some were angry. But most were scared. Because if his crimes were exposed, it meant they had been part of it too. A week later, his name started disappearing from the headlines. Not because the story died. Because it was being replaced with something worse. The investigation widened. The journalists who once praised him now called him the man who used his wife as a cover. The same people who once toasted his success now avoided his name like it was toxic. His friends stopped calling. His business partners stopped replying. And the worst part for him? The people who once envied him, now pitied him. He was no longer powerful. He was irrelevant. I watched it happen from my office, not because I was cruel, but because I had finally realized how dangerous he was. He didn't just hurt me. He used me. And the world needed to see that. The next phase was the hardest. Because I had to confront him publicly again. I organized a press conference. Not to show off. To show proof. The room was packed with reporters. Cameras flashed. My lawyer stood beside me. My heart was steady. Because I wasn't afraid anymore. I walked to the podium and said, "I'm not here to make you feel sorry for me." I paused. "I'm here to make you understand that the truth is louder than lies." Then I played the recordings. The same voice that once said, "Trust me," now spoke in court. In emails. In voicemails. Each recording was like a nail in his coffin. The room went silent. Then the questions started. Did you ever love him? Why didn't you leave sooner? Was this all planned? I answered every question like I was reading a script. Because I was. I had prepared for this moment for months. And when the conference ended, the biggest shock came. The judge assigned a new investigation. A bigger one. One that would not only keep him in prison longer, but also remove his last remaining power. His reputation. As I left the building, I saw him in the distance. A man surrounded by police. His eyes met mine. He tried to smile. It looked like a stranger's smile. He mouthed something. I couldn't hear it, but I knew what it was. He was begging. Not for forgiveness. For mercy. And that's when I finally understood the difference between us. He thought he was a god. I realized I was just human. But humans, when pushed far enough, become unstoppable. That night, I didn't celebrate. I didn't cry. I just sat alone and wrote the next chapter of my life. Not in revenge. In freedom. Because he didn't just lose his company. He lost his power to define me. And that was the real victory. Everyone thinks the story ends when the villain goes to prison. But the real ending is when the victim stops being a victim. After the press conference, the world finally understood what I had known all along. He wasn't just a bad husband. He was a predator hiding behind a charming smile. And now, the charm was gone. But the truth is, I didn't do all of this to be known as the woman who got revenge. I did it because I refused to be used. And because I wanted something that he never could take from me. A new life. The next few months were the most intense of my entire journey. I had court dates, interviews, meetings with lawyers, tax audits. Everything was a battlefield. But it was my battlefield. The first thing I did was shut down the idea that I needed someone else to define my success. I started rebuilding my own company from scratch. No help from him. No credit from him. No approval. I hired a team of women. Women who had been told they were too emotional, too weak, too uneducated. We built something together. Something real. And while the world watched me rise, he watched from behind bars. He wrote letters. He begged. One letter was delivered to my office. It was short, simple, and chilling. He wrote, "You think you won? You only won the war I allowed you to win." I read it once. Then I smiled. Because he still didn't understand. Winning isn't about controlling the outcome. It's about controlling yourself. If I had remained bitter, if I had remained broken, he would have won. But I didn't. I chose freedom. A year after the divorce, I was invited to speak at a women's conference. The host introduced me like I was a survivor. I stood on the stage, looking at thousands of faces. I could feel the weight of every woman who had ever been silenced. I took a deep breath. And I said the one thing that changed everything. I didn't get revenge, I told them. I got my life back. The crowd erupted in applause. And in that moment, I realized something. The story wasn't about him. It was about me. It was about the moment I decided to stop being afraid. The moment I decided that humiliation would not define me. The moment I realized I could be powerful without being cruel. The final twist? I didn't just take his empire. I built my own. And I did it in a way he never could. With dignity. With strength. With grace. Because revenge is temporary. But transformation is forever. The last thing I ever said to him was not in court. It was in my own head. As I watched the sunset from my new office. I whispered, "Thank you." For the first time in my life, I was finally free.